and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom, and this is going to be a video that I've been working on for weeks. It is my complete Marvel Steelbook collection. I've done one of these about 3 years ago, but the collection's obviously grown since then. So this is it, with 392 Steelbooks. I will point out that I have included things like Metalpaks and Iron packs in there as well. So technically speaking, it isn't all Steelbooks, but certainly kind of metal packaging, although I haven't included tin box sets, which I do have a couple of. I also don't collect the animated movies, so there's no animated movies in this collection, so I'm not really interested in animation. So it's just the kind of the live action movies. So I've kind of broken it up into essentially 3 sections really. So you have the MCU, the non-MCU, which is kind of like the Fox, the Sony, those type of ones, and then kind of DVD at the end, which is kind of a mixture of the two. And you know, I hope you kind of enjoy it. It's a little bit of a long video. It took me ages to kind of film and edit to try and kind of keep it somewhat concise. Anyway, I hope you enjoy it. I hope you might discover some editions that maybe that you don't have. This certainly isn't every edition that's out there. But you know, I am somewhat of an avid collector, so it's it's a sizable collection, albeit there are still ones that I don't have. Anyway, I hope you enjoy. Please do let me know what you think of any particular editions that you haven't seen before, that you like the look of, etc. Thanks for watching, and let's get on with it. We'll kick things off with the Blu-ray and 4K in alphabetical order, kind of. And this is going to be Agent Carter first season, which was a exclusive from Zavvi. And kind of forgotten about, to be honest, this TV show. It lasted 2 seasons, and that is season 1. And we have season 2, which has a very kind of similar looking cover, to be honest, probably the same photo shoot if we're honest. And then it got cancelled after 2 seasons. This one, once again, a exclusive to Zavvi. Not a bad show though, to be honest. We have Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 1 on Steelbook. This was again exclusive to Zavvi. This one actually came out a lot long after the other kind of Blu-ray releases of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. seasons. That's number 1. We have Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 2. And you can see here that they follow the same kind of S.H.I.E.L.D. logo motif, as you'll see with the 3rd one in just seconds. Again, exclusive to Zavvi. And then we got Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 3, and this was the final Steelbook that was released on by Zavvi. I don't know why they didn't do any further seasons. Maybe they still will one day. So we move on to the films. This is the standard initial release of Ant-Man. This is actually a German version. I did order the British version when it came out, but it got lost in the post, and then they sold out. So I had to get a German version. So, but it's the same Steelbook outside of the J card. It's obviously different. Then we have the 4K re-release. This one is actually a Best Buy version of it. You can get this the UK version from Zavvi, but I got this before that came out from Best Buy. A friend of mine went to America, so they picked it up for me. It's the same Steelbook essentially though. We have the lenticular version from Zavvi. You'll hear Zavvi a lot during this this video, I'm sure. And then yeah, this is the Mondo version, which they haven't completed the range of time of filming that. I know there are some more Mondo releases coming out in 2023. This is the Ant-Man one. This one again put through Zavvi in the UK, but it was available from other countries as well. And then we have the Best Buy Ferguson collection, which was a random selection of 4 films, I think it was, by artists with the art from Matt Ferguson. And this was exclusive to Best Buy. Fairly kind of minimalistic. Next up we have our first premium, and
This is obviously again Ant-Man. I think this is a Blue Fans version. As you can see here, it is 1,050 copies. And I'll do a very quick unboxing. I won't go through the whole unboxing. I'll just show you so you can show the actual Steelbook, because it is slightly different to the other ones. So then we move on to Ant-Man and the Wasp. This is the initial Steelbook that came out. Again, available from pretty much everywhere. In the UK, this was Zavvi. I think this is available from most retailers. We have the re-release again from Zavvi. This is the lenticular edition of it. And then we have Ant-Man and the Wasp. This is a wheat edition. This one's sealed, so I won't unbox it, but I'll try and put a photo of what the actual Steelbook looks like, sort of out the packet. This is the lenticular version, and this one is one of 1,300. Right, moving on to the Avengers. Now in the UK, officially the original Avengers is known as Avengers Assemble. So this is the UK edition of the Steelbook with that logo on the J card, albeit the J card is the only thing that's different compared to other companies' release. As you can see here, this was released by HMV, which is a UK retailer. This is the same kind of Steelbook, but obviously this is just says Marvel's Avengers. This one I believe is a Nordic one, and this one comes with an extra disc compared to the British one. This is a Asian metal pack rather than the Steelbook, I believe. Actually, it might be a Steelbook. But the difference here is the logo is actually printed on the actual, the actual case itself. I think this might actually be a steel pack, technically speaking. So that's the difference. So it looks similar, but not exactly the same. Then we have that same metal pack. This is from Singapore, and this one has the slipcase, which has embossed foiled writing. Then we actually have the Mondo's Blue Fans Avengers movie. This was quite a departure from Blue Fans, from their typical kind of releases. And we actually had a variant edition as well, which was numbered. As you can see there, it's numbered to 2000. I prefer the colour scheme on this one, I have to say. But also we had a later Mondo's version of the Avengers. This one's a French version. It was released later in the UK, where it says Avengers Assemble on the slip, which I might get at some point, but it's the same Steelbook outside of that. And we have the Matt Ferguson edition from Best Buy in America. As you can see, it just says Avengers. So next up we have a re-release from Zavvi, Avengers Assemble. And this is the 4K version. So obviously Zavvi meaning it's an English copy. But I also picked up the American copy, because you may have noticed the British copy actually says Avengers Assemble. And that's actually printed on the actual Steelbook, and here we just have obviously the Avengers. So the American version of the title. So they are different prints on the actual kind of Steelbook, which is why I decided to get both versions. We have Avengers Assemble. This is the lenticular 3D version that was put out by Zavvi. And then we have a Nova Media, which is a Korean company, and they put out this version, which is a lenticular version, and this is limited to 2,000 copies, as you can see right there. The Steelbook for this is specific to this release. These are sealed, so I will just see if I can put a picture up for you to show you what that looks like. Nova Media also puts out these kind of singular versions, the full slips, which are kind of has a foiled finish to them. and these were numbered slightly less, I believe, yeah, to 1,000. So you can see on there. So we have Iron Man and the Hulk. We have Thor and Hawkeye. And again, they are all numbered to 1,000. And then we have Captain America and Black Widow. So these are all the same Steelbook, obviously with just the kind of the different outer case. Moving on to Avengers Age of Ultron. This is the standard edition 3D release of the movie. This is the UK version, which was, I believe, is Zavvi. We have the 4K re-release, again from Zavvi. We have the Mondo Age of Ultron, put out by Zavvi, but again I believe this is put out by different retailers in other countries. We have the lenticular version, the 3D release. We have the Best Buy, which is America, Matt Ferguson edition. We have the Blue Fans lenticular slip. This one is limited to 1,000 copies. And if this one is open, I will just quickly show you the actual Steelbook itself. Really nice design. I think Wheat actually did their own version of this one. This one is the Nova Media second release of the Age of Ultron. They actually put out two releases. The original release had the same Steelbook as kind of every other, the standard release, but this one is actually the different Steelbook, so I'll quickly show you. So it does have this lenticular magnet, and if you take it off, it is an actual different Steelbook here. This one is fairly hard to get hold of, to be honest. They did do a couple of versions with you know, full slips, but this one I think is limited to 200 copies, which I don't know if you can see, so it's pretty scarce. Next up we have the double pack of Age of Ultron and the original Avengers. As you can see by the Avengers logo there, this is a UK release. I believe this was again put out by Zavvi. And then we have Avengers Infinity War. This is the standard edition kind of release Steelbook, the first one. And this is a 3D version from Zavvi. So next up we have Avengers Infinity War. This is the 3D lenticular version of that movie, again exclusive to Zavvi. We have the Mondo version with a very busy cover. I kind of quite like the art, but it's very busy. It's a UK version. We actually have this one, which is a little bit of a half job I've got. This is, I think, a Blue Fans version, but it's just the Steelbook. It doesn't come... I got this kind of off eBay, and it didn't have like the J card and what have you. So that is the what the Blue Fans Steelbook kind of looks like, albeit mine doesn't have the J card and all this. Well, this version doesn't. I've got another version, I'll show you in just a second, which is this one here. So this is the single lenticular version, and inside this has the same Steelbook I've just showed you, so I won't unpack this one. And this one is limited to 1250. Infinity War. Then we have the Avengers 3 movie collection. So the original, obviously, plus Age of Ultron and Infinity War. And then we have Endgame. This is the standard edition release. This is a 3D version. I don't have a 4K player, so I don't see the point in spending money on a 4K version unless I have to. So yeah, that's the initial release. Zavvi at this point were trying to develop a kind of premium version for themselves, and this is kind of one their early attempts at it. And this one, I don't know how well those will show it, even if it will still work, but it is a light up one. It looks like it does, yeah, it does kind of show. I don't know how well that will show up under the spotlight here, but yeah, that does light up. Essentially, it's the same kind of standard sort of steelbook, but just comes with a bunch of like postcards and enamel badges. But it's a little bit. I mean, the problem is with me is the artwork here is the sort of thing they use on decals, which I think looks a little cheap. Yeah, we got the Endgame 3D lenticular version again from Zavvi. And then we have the Mondo version, again a little bit like Infinity War. It's a very busy cover, so it's kind of hard to see at a distance, but it's good art. That's the UK version, which would have been from Zavvi. We also have the Wheat Premium Edition. This one is sealed, so I can't show you the actual steelbook, but I'll see if I can put a picture up if I remember. And that one is limited to 950 pieces. I do like this kind of like this holographic shimmering effect that it does have on the sleeve, however. Next up, I have a kind of one-click edition. I don't really go in for one-clicks all that much, but this one I actually picked up for pretty cheap. So this one is the Fanatics version, limited to 500 copies. And I'll quickly open this up for you, as it is unsealed. So we have two versions inside, with obviously different lenticular editions. The actual steelbook itself, this one is it's a double lenticular. The actual steelbook itself, however, is the same standard version, so it's not a worldwide exclusive artwork on that one. So we have this 4-movie collection which comes in a metal box and is all the 4 films, so Avengers Age of Ultron, Infinity War and Endgame. This was an exclusive to Best Buy. It just so happened a friend of mine was holidaying in America and managed to pick this one up for me because this would have been expensive to import. It's obviously sealed, and the actual art on these steelbooks are actually exclusive, particularly the kind of the last 2, because they are there's no artwork like that on the actual initial releases. But it is sealed, so I won't kind of unseal it here. But it's a nice kind of sturdy set with this metal case. Right, so we have the Avengers 4-pack steelbook. This one's a Spanish release, and quite similar to the kind of initial launches of the first couple of films there. This particular design has never been released outside of, I think, Spain, or maybe it was Italy. Who knows? I cannot speak the language either way. I'm fairly sure it was Spain, but it could be Italy. So there you go. That is the Avengers 4-pack. And then we move on to the letter B. And in this one, it starts with Black Panther. And so this is the initial launch steelbook that you would have seen probably in most retailers. I actually quite like the design. A lot of people don't like this design, but I do quite like it. I'm actually somewhat ambivalent on the film, to be honest with you. It's a film that I think a lot of people got caught up in the hype with, but I think it's not a bad film, but I think it's not as good as people kind of say. But it's a nice kind of like interesting design here. The next up we have the Zavvi launch of the lenticular magnet range, and this one a close-up of Chadwick Boseman on the front there. I quite like the design of this one. I quite like the colour, what they've done with the colours here. That's an exclusive to Zavvi. Next up we have the Mondo, and this I think looks really cool. The kind of the gold and black kind of accents there with some pretty nice artwork. I have to say here, this particular kind of steelbook, and this one again in the UK is exclusive to Zavvi. Then we have this American Steelbook, which is exclusive to the Best Buy retailer out there. This one just seemed to come out. It's not a part of a particular kind of range or anything like that. It just seemed to, they just launched this one just because, with no other kind of like range in this one, other titles in this range, but there you go. And then we have the Blue Fans edition. Now this is the quarter sleeve here. Now I actually like the design of this rather than the kind of the slip cases, so I decided to get this one rather than a slipcase edition. I may well get a slipcase one later on down the line. And this particular one is limited to 700 pieces. So the ones that come in this slipcase are the same design as this, but obviously this one just shows the artwork, which I think is pretty good. We also have this edition from Wheat, and this one has an exclusive worldwide artwork on the actual steelbook itself. My version is sealed, so I can't show it, but I will try and put up a photo to show you what the actual artwork is like of this one. And they have a variety of different sleeves. This was my favourite artwork out of the ones that were available, and that is limited to 1,400 and is from the retailer, or the online retailer, Wheat. Moving on to Black Widow, and this is the initial launch of the Steelbook here in the UK, really emphasising the nice kind of colorization on this one, the kind of the white uniform with the kind of the black and white background. So yeah, quite like this one. Not, you know, the film is lackluster, but I do like the Steelbook. And then we have a premium edition from a company called SM Life. Now that it has the same Steelbook as I've just shown you with the other one, the only difference really being that it has this kind of foiled sleeve, and it does have a kind of a booklet in there as well. And it's a nice design, I have to say. The colours do look lovely in this. I'm not quite sure how they'll show up on camera. Moving on to Captain America, the First Avenger. This is the initial launch here in the UK, and this one was an exclusive to HMV. This is one of the earlier kind of Blu-ray steelbooks that I actually got. And yeah, obviously, being it's a vibranium shield, it makes sense we have a steelbook which kind of displays that, which is quite cool. There you go. We have the Mondo version. This one is a exclusive to Savvy here in the UK, but again, these versions have been out in other companies in different parts of the world. We had this second edition come out from Savvy. Just a different design there. Then we have the 4K edition, again from Savvy. This is a UK steelbook. And we also have the lenticular edition. So I think this is the first kind of lenticular version. This one initially actually came out with like one of those subscription boxes. It was exclusive to that, but they kind of later re-released it just separately. And then we have Captain America, the Winter Soldier, which is still my favourite out of the MCU movies. This is the American version, which has a very similar, albeit slightly different, artwork to the European version, which we're going to show you in a minute. But this is the US edition, as I said. I'm not sure if it's a particular kind of retailer exclusive necessarily, but that is the US edition. So next up we have the Winter Soldier. This is the German version, and you'll notice, as mentioned, the actual picture is slightly different there. You've got Cap's helmet off, for example, and in Germany they called it Return of the First Avenger. Obviously trying to get away from the actual America kind of language there, but there you go. So that is the German version of the initial launch. Then we have the UK version, which is essentially the same steelbook as the German one. You've obviously got the J card there with the actual kind of title of the movie. And that's pretty much the steelbook. But I think that's for most, most sort of territories outside of America, really. Next up, we have a kimchi version, a premium edition. of the Winter Soldier with a lenticular slipcase. See, it has the card on the back there, and that is limited to 1,500. Let's have a quick look at the actual steelbook. It is actually an exclusive art for this particular company there. That is the Kimchi steelbook. Next up we have Zavvi's lenticular release. It's got lenticular magnet on it. And then we have the 4K release. And then we have the Mondo release. Zavvi have actually just announced a whole load of these Mondo steelbooks for 2023 for titles they haven't done yet, but I thought I can't wait for them, otherwise this video is never going to get done. And then we have the Nova Media release. Now this steelbook is actually the same as the the kind of the standard release, so it's just a different slipcase. You've just got the kind of the cap outside the helicarrier, but I do like this this design. It kind of does give off that kind of like spy thriller kind of vibe to it, and that was limited to 1,000 pieces. Also from Nova Media, they did this lenticular version, and again it has the same steelbook as that initial launch, and that one is limited to 500 pieces. Let me move on to Civil War. This is the standard version. I think it was pretty much released worldwide when it first kind of came out. Then we have a lenticular version from Wheat. And that is limited to 1,500. This one is open so I can kind of show you the steelbook, and it is an exclusive artwork on the actual steelbook itself. Okay, next up we have the Blue Fans edition. This is a full slip version. This one is sealed, so I'm not going to be able to show you this, but I will see if I can put a photo of the actual steelbook over the top here. And that is released, that is a limited of 1,000 copies there. And then we have Nova Media, which has the same steelbook as the initial launch. They're the kind of the standard steelbook that was kind of released. It just has a different sort of slip cover on it. And that one is limited to 700. But it has a nice foiled outer case there. Next up we have the Zavvi 4K release. Now again, I think this release was out in America. I saw they put this out in America. We have the Zavvi lenticular magnet release. Oh, it's not exactly the most animated one though. With a Matt Ferguson Best Buy exclusive. And then wrapping up Captain America, we have the Captain America trilogy. This is an Italian version because this came out before the UK version. But there is actually a UK version of this as well. Okay, so you move on to Captain Marvel. This is the initial launch steelbook that was kind of out in. This one was particularly in Zavvi, but I assume this was kind of the standard release steelbook that went around the world. Some of a waste of space on the artwork, if you ask me, on this one. Then you have the Zavvi 3D lenticular edition. And then you have the Zavvi's, one of their early attempts at a premium, and this very kind of large box. And this one had this interesting like artwork that they used for the sticker decals, which I didn't think was very good. And this one, I can't even remember where the thing is now, but you press it and it lights up. I don't know how well that will show up, but yeah, and it's the same initial launch Steelbook, just packaged with, well, quite a lot of tack, quite frankly. And then you have the Wheat Steelbook. I like this one because it's one of the few ones that actually has Captain Marvel with a helmet on, which I kind of quite like. I kind of quite like the kind of the mohawk way she has her hair on that. So that is the Wheat version. This is sealed, so I can't show the actual Steelbook, but I'll put a picture up to show you what the actual Steelbook looks like on the inside, and that is limited to 1,150. Nice kind of foiled kind of embossing on the back there, as well as the front. Next up, we have Daredevil. Now, some people may argue that this is not part of the MCU anymore. I would counter that this was made to be part of the MCU, so therefore it still counts in my opinion. And that is the Netflix show. This is season 1, which was exclusive to Zavvi, although I do believe this was released in Germany as well. And next up we have season 2, which is where he donned his more sort of well-known costume. Again, I think this was actually released in Germany as well, so you can get German version. This, of course, brought in the Punisher into the MCU. They didn't do a 3rd season, however. They did do a 3rd season, but it was never released on disc. Next up, we have Doctor Strange. This is the initial launch Steelbook, which is obviously just kind of the close-up of the Eye of Agamotto. And this was probably essentially the one that was out all over the world. We have the 4K re-release. This is actually an American Best Buy version. It came out there before it came out in the UK, and I had a friend who was visiting the States, so I got her to pick it up. And we have the Zavvi 3D Lenticular Edition. And then we have the Mondo Edition, which is actually one of my favourite Mondo covers, actually, because it kind of looks a lot like the comics. Next up, we have a Blue Found edition, and this is the single lenticular edition here. A really nice artwork on that, I have to say, and that's the back of it. Now, this is unsealed, so I can show you the Steelbook. Although that, to me, this Steelbook is is one of the best looking Steelbooks I think that Marvel have done. This particular one, I actually wanted to get this as a quarter slip, to be honest with you, because I like this art on this Steelbook better than the kind of slip cases. But this particular version I got came up for relatively cheap, so it was silly not to get it, really. Next up, we have Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. This is the only version I've got of this particular movie at the moment. Now, this is the Zavvi Collector's Edition, which is the standard Steelbook, except you get this cardboard slipcase. I would have liked this to be numbered, to be honest with you, because they did charge quite a lot more for it. You do get like a little booklet in there as well, but, you know, Zavvi are kind of doing the bare minimum, I feel, with some of their kind of quote-unquote premium releases. And this is the Eternals. Again, this is the only edition that I have for this. This is the SM Life edition, and it has the same kind of standard Steelbook that was released everywhere, essentially, outside of you get this kind of this nice kind of foiled slipcase. The nice kind of foiled back there. So this is the only version I have of this. I don't even have the standard one, to be honest with you, because I really didn't like this film all that much, but obviously I wanted to get it. I still might get the standard version at some point, just to kind of have it on display. But I hope they don't do too many versions of this, because I don't want to spend a lot of money on this film. So then we move on to Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm sure everyone knows this Steelbook. This is the initial launch, which was obviously designed to look like a cassette player, personal stereo. I didn't really like this design. I know it's clever and all that, but to me it was boring. If I'm paying a premium price, I want the premium artwork. So there you go. This was the Zavvi Lenticular edition. This one was the only one that really didn't have artwork. It had like a publicity shot on the kind of the cover there. So I was less thrilled with this one, to be honest, because all the rest, every single other one had artwork. This had a publicity photo. And then we have the 4K re-release. This is the Best Buy version, the same version that was released in the UK a little later. But again, this was one of them a friend of mine picked up from the States while they were over there. And then we have the Mondo version of Guardians of the Galaxy. And that is a Zavvi exclusive, although I do believe you can get the Mondo versions from different countries as well. Okay, so now we move on to the Blue Fans edition of the original Guardians of the Galaxy. This is one of my favourite steelbooks. I just love the image and the way it's presented with that kind of colour scheme. I know that the 4K version that was released on Zavvi has a similar picture, but it's just the actual kind of colours and the way that's presented. I just like this one. So this is the quarter slip version of the Blue Fans version, and it's limited to 800. Mine is 664. And I also have the double lenticular version. Same steelbook inside, so I won't unbox this one. But this one is obviously double lenticular version with Peter Quill on the back there. And that one is limited to 2,000 copies. Of mine is 1,351. So I double dipped on this one purely because I got this one particularly cheap. This one is the Nova Media steelbook, and I think this is, because they've released a couple, and this was their second steelbook of this one, which I think has an exclusive steelbook, so we'll have a look at that in just a minute. And that one is limited to 900 copies. So this is the actual steelbook itself. Yeah, and that one is exclusive to this particular release of the Nova Media one. There is another release, which was the first release, which just had the standard tape recorder steelbook. Next up, we have the aforementioned other release of Nova Media. So this was their first release, and this one just has the standard tape recorder steelbook inside. So I won't unbox this one, but as you can see there, that one is limited to 500. They also did this kind of cool, kind of 70s kind of style retro look. And again, this is the Nova Media one with this kind of the tape recorder steelbook. This is the full slip version. And is limited to, I can't even see, 700. So then we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. This is the standard release, of course. Another kind of high concept art. I'm not a huge fan of these kind of, sort of clever idea steelbooks, to be honest. I'd much rather have just a poster artwork, to be honest with you. And then we have the Zavvi lenticular magnet release, and this this one here is a little bit of a blurry image, I have to say. And next up we have the same kind of image, although Rocket's actually in a slightly different position. I don't know if you'll notice that. And that is the Blue Fans quarter slip edition. Now again, I just like the colour scheme on this one. I think it's, obviously quite different from the previous Zavvi version. So I think that really works well. And that's limited to 900 copies, of which mine is 766. Currently, I think this is probably one of my top contenders for favourite kind of steelbooks, to be honest with you, because it really is, it reminds me of like some sort of candy sweets sort of type situation. Next up we have the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. This is a 3D Blu-ray, and this is the wheat version. And is this sealed? I can't remember. Let's have a look. But it's not sealed, so I will show you the steelbook. And again, I mean, the Guardians of the Galaxy really kind of have some pretty good art designs. That is the exclusive steelbook to this version. and a really a great image there. And that obviously is limited to, God, I can't even see, 300? 1300. There you go. And then we have the Mondo version of the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. This is the Zavvi release. I know that there are obviously releases of this particular artwork in other countries. There you go, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Next up we have the Incredible Hulk, and this is obviously a landscape steelbook, and this was released by Play.com here in the UK. Now, of course, the Incredible Hulk is actually distributed by Universal, compared to Disney. So this is why these look a little different, and you'll see another example of that in a minute. And here we go, this is one of these kind of comic book versions that was released. They did a range of these ones. This was the only Marvel one, I think, apart from like the other Hulk film. And again, this is because it's a Universal release. It doesn't quite match up with the rest of the kind of the MCU releases, because Universal have the distribution rights to solo Hulk film. That doesn't stop us from getting plenty of releases. This is the lenticular version, which I want to say was put out by Zavvi here in the UK. This is a UK steelbook. It might have been HMV, but I'm pretty sure it was Zavvi. And this is the Nova Media lenticular version. This one is sealed. I can't remember what the actual steelbook is here, so I will put a picture, if I can, of the actual steelbook, and this is limited to 1,800. And then we have this re-release. Again, this one is by Zavvi. This is the 4K version, and again, you're looking at a very different style of artwork here. This one actually has a kind of a die-cut scene, a die-cut slipcase, sorry, which you can kind of see the it poking through here. What Zavvi also did, they did a double pack with the Incredible Hulk and the Ang Lee version of the Hulk, which isn't part of the MCU. So this was a little bit of an anomaly. So this has both steelbooks. Now this version I have is unsealed. It is actually numbered. And again, this was put out by Universal. So again, this is why it doesn't really kind of match up with existing releases. That is on there pretty tight. The things I do. Okay, so I'm going to show you the Ang Lee Hulk as well, purely because it's here in this set. But let's have a look at the Incredible Hulk one first. So as you can see, it has this kind of die-cut sleeve. And then you've got the steelbook there. And even though this is in alphabetical order, that is the Ang Lee steelbook. The Ang Lee steelbook, the Ang Lee Incredible Hulk. I don't think that artwork is very good. Let's be honest. So, yeah. We're getting ahead now because obviously this one is not actually part of the MCU. And then we have the Blue Fans version of the Incredible Hulk. This is the single lenticular, and the reason I like this one is because the actual case was significantly different to anything else, and this one is limited to 700. I believe this is unsealed, so we can crack it open for a quick look. Similar design, to be honest, and you would have seen that the Zavvi lenticular one. But yeah, there you go. Got obviously slightly different colouring and everything on that, and that is obviously embossing. So that is the Blue Fans version. Okay, moving on to Iron Fist. This is the first season, and this was a series put out by Netflix. And this was really the first MCU project to get a little bit of negative feedback. I didn't think it was terrible, to be honest with you, but it was maybe one of the better ones. Now, they didn't release the second season on Steelbook, nor even on Blu-ray, so this kind of is the outlier. But I'm glad we got at least one of the seasons on Steelbook. This was a release by Zavvi here in the UK. Right, the granddaddy of them all. We are talking Iron Man. Now, the Steelbook you are looking at here is considered to be mainly to be the kind of the grail item of the MCU Steelbook collection, outside of maybe some of the premiums. So this is the Future Shop, which is a Canadian company, Blu-ray Steelbook. And this is one of the first kind of Blu-ray Steelbooks to come out, exclusive to a Canadian retailer, which is why it's, you know, not particularly kind of well distributed. And it's an older style Steelbook because the design is somewhat simple. You've obviously got the kind of the blue border across the top there. In the grand scheme of things, it's kind of like not the most interesting. And it has devalued quite recently, I think primarily because of the influx of premium Steelbooks. But nonetheless, this is still a kind of a must-have item if you're a serious Marvel collector. And as I say, it's not as valuable as it once was. This is the UK version, which came out a bit later. Then this one was released by Play.com before they kind of imploded and disappeared off the face of the earth. And you'll note it's a kind of a similar theme with all these Iron Man because they kind of look a little similar, to be honest with you. So yeah, I still like this Steelbook though. Xavi had a go at their lenticular version, and this one's got this kind of circuitry design in the kind of the background, which I kind of quite like. This is one of their earlier lenticular versions, and I want to say this one might have come originally in one of their kind of Z boxes, which was a like a subscription box. You had to get that to be able to get this Steelbook, although they did release it separately later on. This is the German version, and this is from a retailer called MediaMarkt, and that's an exclusive to them. Not quite as sought after as the Future Shop version, but in its own right, it's still a somewhat kind of sought after version. But again, it's an older style Steelbook. You've got the blue border there. It's kind of a somewhat kind of a boring design. You've got all the text actually printed on the Steelbook. Then you have the Mondo version of Iron Man. Now, this one, out of the initial releases by the Mondo Steelbooks that were released in the UK, this is the most sought after because this one was not released internationally until a lot later. So this one I think came out in Germany a little while, but you could get the range in the French, you know, the French releases, but they didn't do this one. So this one for a long time was only available in the UK, and that's why this one, out of all the kind of the Mondo Steelbooks, maybe with the exception of the Blue Fans Avengers ones, is probably the most sought after. We have the Blue Fans 4K Steelbook, which is their kind of re-release of this kind of rustic design on the kind of the borders. And then we have the Blue Fans version, which is this lenticular edition, and this is limited to 3,000 copies. But this is the version that's actually inside. This is their quarter slip case, so it's the same Steelbook that I've just showed you, just in quarter slip, and that is limited to 1,000. There is a slightly different version of this apparently, which was produced, but they didn't actually distribute it, which doesn't come with a disc, but it's negligible difference, to be honest. We have this Iron Man. This is actually a metal pack, because it has different kind of hinges on there, embossed. This is a German one. This came out a lot later. We have the Kimchi Steelbook, which kind of, again, it's similar kind of design there. This one is limited to 3,000 copies. And that is the Kimchi lenticular slip. And that is what it looks like underneath. This is actually my favourite design out of all the Iron Man Steelbooks. Although it's not really all that sought after, to be honest, but this is actually the favourite design. So the one I've just showed you has this one inside it. So it's an exclusive artwork, and I think the most imposing looking at the kind of the images. It's limited to 700. So that is the Kimchi version, the quarter slip edition. And then we have a quite recent release. This is the French version of the 4K edition, and this one is exclusive, as far as I know, to France. I think possibly because they didn't get the Mondo version, so they got this instead. Weird design on the back, I will say. So then we have Iron Man 2, and this is a metal pack which was exclusive to a US retailer. I want to say Best Buy, although I could be kind of wrong there. And look, it's limited to 30,000. So, you know, not exactly a small number there, really. We have the German version of the Steelbook. This time we have Tony Stark poking through. We have the Play.com exclusive version of Iron Man 2, the Silver Centurion armour there. We have the Zavvi lenticular magnet version. We have this, I'm not quite sure which country this is from. Clearly it's from an Asian country, but in Asia they got this kind of design, and it was released in a few different countries. And you can get this Steelbook is the same, but there's a couple of different versions which has got different kind of stickers and things like this from the different countries. I'm not entirely sure which one's which. The Steelbook is the same, but just the sticker kind of setup is a little different. Korea, Taiwan, places like that. Anyway, that is one of them, although I couldn't tell you which one. We have the Mondo version of Iron Man 2. Again, this one was through Zavvi here in the UK. And then we have the 4K version. Again, released in Zavvi here in the UK. Okay, so we have the German double pack of the original Iron Man and Iron Man 2. Two movies for the price of one, and this is a German Steelbook. So then we move on to Iron Man 3, and this is the initial launch on the UK. I'm pretty sure this is the kind of the standard launch for all of the international releases as well, but this one I believe is probably from Zavvi. We actually have a variant on that, which is, I believe, a Taiwan version that comes with a clear PET sleeve, which actually gives the illusion of a kind of lit up art character. It's the same Steelbook, just with a different kind of PET sleeve over the top to give it that effect. So I thought was quite good and kind of warranted a, because it was different enough, purchase. Next up we have the lenticular 3D edition from Zavvi with a lenticular magnet. These lenticular magnets are for the most part not all that impressive, I have to say. You know, but it's different artwork. These ones were significantly different from anything else. Then we had the 4K release from Zavvi, and again I believe this was a release in things like Best Buy, in the States and things like this. So this kind of weathered look. Yeah, so but it's got the good artwork on it at least. Then we actually have a metal pack from Germany. Now this, I don't know how well you'll see that. You can see the light reflecting on it. It's heavily embossed. That is a real kind of like 3D embossed image on there. But as you can see, it's a metal pack because you've got that hinged spine. People are less fussed about metal packs. They are what they are. It's just another kind of like version of the kind of the collectible, if you ask me. I mean, admittedly, the printing is not brilliant on that one. It kind of Tony Stark doesn't look great, but it's a nice, still a nice variant one to get. But interesting with Germany, you actually got that same image on their kind of regular Steelbook, which came out prior to that metal pack. I have to say, I think the colours are very muted on this Steelbook. It looks kind of dark, if you ask me. And I think it's sometimes true of the German ones. Not particularly kind of like bright colours, and all books a little bit kind of like, well, quite frankly, quite dull. But as you can see here, it's got that the old style kind of blue border on it. But yeah, this one was an exclusive artwork to Germany. Okay, so moving on to some Iron Man Trilogy Steelbooks. Now this one was released in the UK, but it was actually released in Italy first of all. So this is actually the Italian version of the Steelbook. Again, the Iron Man Steelbooks generally look somewhat similar because it's just a picture of the mask, really. So they kind of have a sameness to it to a certain degree. But yes, this does feature all 3 Iron Man movies. We have another Steelbook here, and this is actually one of my, I would say, somewhat more recent purchases, because I thought this was an incredibly boring artwork. But the actual edition is quite expensive because it's, you know, the original 4K versions of it, I suppose. But quite lazy design, I've got to be honest with you. So I put off getting this one. It's a German release, but it still goes for a reasonable amount of money. But, you know, artistically, it's kind of a little dull on the old artwork front. And then we have another Blu-ray trilogy Steelbook, again from Germany, this one. This one's just the Blu-ray version, however. And that is the Iron Man trilogy. So moving on to something a little different. Jessica Jones. This is the first series, or first season of the series, which ran for 3 seasons, but they only released this initial series, which, to be honest with you, this initial season, which was by far and away the best out the 3 seasons. And this is, of course, one of the Netflix ones that kind of got cancelled. It's a shame they didn't release all of them, but I'm glad we've at least got one edition of Jessica Jones on kind of a Steelbook edition, even though the others, to date at least, have yet to be released, even on disc officially. And the same can be said for Luke Cage, which I don't think has this, you know, it's not looked on with as much reverence as Jessica Jones season 1 or the Daredevil kind of seasons, or even the Punisher, I would say. I still actually quite liked this this particular Netflix series. I actually think Mike Coulter, who played Luke Cage, was pretty good. I quite liked him in the role. I do think it was the storyline wasn't as good, I will say that, and it did feel like it dragged a little bit in places, and yeah, the villains weren't particularly strong, but yeah, it's still not bad, certainly not a bad series. And next up we have Shang-Chi, and this is the initial launch. To date, this is the only one that I got of Shang-Chi. I'm sure we'll get like Mondo releases at some point. I think, I mean, they seem to be kind of pulling back a little bit on the kind of the re-releases of the more recent Marvel films, at least for now, but I guess we'll see. Right, on to Spider-Man, and we are talking Spider-Man Homecoming. And this was, as you can see by the sticker here in the UK, a HMV exclusive, the 4K version. Yeah, and yeah, I actually prefer this movie to the second one. I think I maybe prefer the third one overall, but this is, I really enjoyed this one. We also have this edition, which I also got from HMV, although I don't think it's exclusive to that. So this comes with a 3D magnet of the kind of the spider emblem, and it has a kind of a slightly thicker, you know, plastic casing. They did release this afterwards without the magnet, but yeah, this is the initial launch that comes with the magnet as well. We got the lenticular re-release from Zavi. Again, you see what I mean with the lenticular here. Not particularly impressive, but I like the kind of the cartoon or maybe comic book that should be kind of design of the artwork here. Prior to that, however, you actually got a very similar looking Steelbook in Germany. This one, I think the colouring here is a little different. As you can see, the shading, it looks even more comic book like than the one I've just shown you, the British version. This is obviously the 4K release, and it doesn't have the lenticular magnet. But I think overall, out of the two of the ones I've just shown you, this is it looks a little bit stronger, this one. And then we have the Film Arena release. This one has a lenticular magnet, but it is actually the same art underneath, so I won't bother kind of unpackaging it for you. Yeah, pretty good Steelbook in regards to its art. I like having the kind of the vulture on the back there, and yeah, this is a nice addition from Film Arena. Okay, now this one is the Blue Fans edition, but this is just the Steelbook that came inside the package. I bought this initially because it was really cheap and someone was just selling it just as a Spider-Man Homecoming, not realising, I don't think, it was actually a Blue Fans edition. Now, it doesn't come with any of the bump that the Blue Fans sort of standard version would come with, but it was kind of so cheap it was just a crime not to pick it up, really. That being said, I don't like half products, so I did buy the normal kind of, well, I say the normal, the kind of the actual full release for the Blue Fans edition. This one being the 3D version. They actually release this as 4K as well, and that is a double lenticular slipcase, and that is limited. I don't know how well you'll see that. To 250, mine being 110. So yeah, it's that was the one I've just shown you is the one that is actually inside this edition. So moving on to Far From Home, which, like I've mentioned previously, this is actually the least favourite out of the 3 Spider-Man films, although I don't think it's a bad film by any stretch of the imagination. And we actually got 2 sort of initial releases in the UK. This is the first one, which I want to say was from HMV. And this one you actually could get a postcard as well. So yeah, a bit of a weird artwork on that one, but there you go. This was actually a Zavvi re-release. Again, with their lenticular collection. Very, very busy artwork. And again, I think the lenticular here isn't one of the better ones. But I also have the French version, which has that obviously a little bit better printed, I would say. This was the initial release for the French release. Again, the artwork is just a little bit too busy for me personally, but I, am a completionist, so I like to get, all of the designs if I can. This was the kind of the other release from the UK, which I think was probably from Zavvi. And this one is actually one of the ones that had the different locations on some of the editions here. So this one is obviously the London Bridge version seen here. And you've got a similar looking steelbook, but the background being in Germany there. That is the German version. And there's a third version like that, which is actually a Brazilian release, but I don't think that's Brazil, to be honest. I actually think that's Prague. But this was actually the Brazilian release, so there you go. Now you'll notice the actual background is different, but the actual Spider-Man pose is the same one that was in the German version. So a little bit cheating there, I have to say. But this out of the 3 kind of like location one is the hardest one to get. So this is the Film Arena version here, which has a lenticular magnet on it. And I think the artwork is the same underneath. And this is a limited one of 400, mine being 26. So yeah, nice. I actually think this, personally, this is my favourite Far From Home design. So this one's a little bit of a weird one. This is a Blue Fans quote-unquote fan edition box set. Now, there's not a film in this. You actually get the steelbook, but not the discs. Now, I know that, obviously, Blue Fans being a Chinese company, you get the little badge in there. I don't know if you can see that. I'll put a picture up of the actual steelbook that you get in. I think the idea being is you buy your own version of, Far From Home and put it in the steelbook that's in there. But I know, for example, China has had some issues, shall we say, with some of the films, including kind of Marvel, even though this is technically a Sony film. Obviously, Disney have had some issues with them. I don't know if that's something to do with it, but well, who knows. But it's also a really kind of flimsy box. I mentioned this when I first picked it up. It's a very, very flimsy box. So I'm not a massive fan of this, if I'm completely honest. I didn't know this was so flimsy before I picked it up. We have an early Zavvi attempt to have a premium edition, and this is one of those ones that did like with Captain Marvel, where it kind of, you press the button and it kind of lights up and everything like this. It's the same initial steelbook that you would have got, just the same one, but it just comes with this very unwieldy box, to be honest. And inside you get, you know, some bits and pieces, postcards, I think some enamel badges. Yeah, there you go. So this is the Japanese version of Spider-Man Far From Home, which does come with a exclusive steelbook. Now, Sony is a Japanese company, so if a movie is released by Sony, the Japanese audience tends to get some exclusive stuff. They did the same thing with the Ghostbusters relaunches. So yeah, so if you ever want to get a Sony movie, you know, check out the kind of Amazon Japan, because you will often get a Japanese exclusive. Yeah, but it's a cool little box there, and you get a bunch of stuff in there as you normally do. And yeah, an exclusive steelbook that you can only get for the Japanese market. Okay, this one, I'll be honest with you, I didn't really want to get, because to me it's a little bit of a mess of a steelbook. This comes with Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man Far From Home, Venom, and Across the Spider-Verse, the animated one. Now, I don't really like this one, because you're kind of crossing the franchises. I mean, I know with the multiverse and all that, you could argue, oh, you know, they're all the kind of all connected now, but they weren't when this came out. So yeah, you've got two movies that are in the MCU, one that's in the kind of the Sony Venom verse, and then this animated one. So it's a little bit of a mishmash to me. So I was kind of, I don't really want to spend a lot of money on this one, because it's like, I don't really want to get it. But again, it's that completionist in me. Oh, God, I'm missing it, so I've got to pick it up. Luckily, I managed to pick it up for cheap. You can actually get a German version of this one, but this is actually the American edition, which I think came out first. All right, so then we've got Spider-Man No Way Home, the kind of the initial launch, and this one was kind of previewed, and it was we were thinking, oh, is there going to be something else in the background here? Because this is kind of plain. Nope. There you go. Yeah, that is the initial launch of the Spider-Man No Way Home. But you also had the much better artwork, I have to say, for Spider-Man No Way Home. But you do have the Japanese version, which once again, like the other Japanese versions I've shown you, it has an exclusive steelbook, which I will kind of put a picture up, but I think it's more or less this picture anyway. So yeah, once again with the Japanese versions, you get various kind of like paraphernalia inside, and you actually, if you get it through Amazon, you actually get an additional DVD, of which I prefer it in the box, but there you go. So that's this is on the Japanese from Amazon Japan, and you get that disc with that if you get it through Amazon. So the Japanese ones are reasonably expensive, but you know, again, Sony being a Japanese company, they tend to get a lot of the good stuff there. And then we're moving on to Thor, and this is the HMV exclusive steelbook that came out as the initial launch. This is actually, I think, the first Blu-ray steelbook that I actually bought new. So this kind of started the fad, to be honest with you. I still quite like this movie to a certain degree. I don't think it's one of the stronger Marvel movies, but I still maybe like it more than some, I would say. But I quite like the minimalistic design here of this one. So that is the HMV edition of Thor. Okay, so this is the kind of re-release steelbook from Zavvi that they did some of the earlier movies in. Obviously different artwork, just a Blu-ray one. This is before they did like the lenticular or the 4K or the Mondo ones. They didn't do these for every Marvel movie, just some of the earlier ones. That is the re-release Thor. And then we have the lenticular version, again from Zavvi. This is a 3D edition, and it has a lenticular magnet there. There's a lot of criticism with this one that the magnet doesn't kind of line up with the actual kind of steelbook and stuff. I actually quite like the artwork on this one though. I think it's pretty strong. And then we have the 4K version, which of course has that same artwork as the kind of the re-release version. And this one was released in, this particular version is a Zavvi one, but the actual design here was released kind of, I think, in a lot of countries, so you can pick this up more or less anywhere. Or at least certainly in Best Buy in America. And then we have the Zavvi released Mondo version, at least that's the UK release of it. I believe, again, you can get this from different retailers across different countries. So this artwork to me, I feel its helmet looks too small. You know, but there you go. That's just me. It's not one of the stronger Mondo artworks, I have to say. But at least, I think, you've got the helmet on because he wears it so infrequently in the films. My big release for Thor, the original Thor, is the Blue Fans lenticular version with this kind of nice red lenticular box here. This is one of the earlier kind of Marvel releases from Blue Fans and is one of the more sought after ones. Now this one is unsealed, so I will show you the actual steelbook. As you can see here, it's limited to 1,300. The actual steelbook itself, although it is technically speaking limited to this release, it's very similar to the original HMV release. The only real difference is that you have that kind of sky, the clouds, and the kind of the background there. Maybe it's a little bit kind of better with the embossing and that, and a bit more kind of shiny, but yeah, this is essentially the same kind of steelbook when it comes down to it. So moving on to Thor: The Dark World, which is for a lot of people's the kind of the least out of the Marvel movies, the kind of the one which is in the bottom of the pile. So this is the initial launch steelbook that came out. This is the UK version, but I think this design was out more or less everywhere. I don't really like steelbooks where they have kind of like just a still from the film, if that makes sense. If it's going to be like a photograph, I prefer like a publicity shot, like a kind of like a posed shot rather than a kind of action shot, because it just kind of looks kind of cheap to me, if I'm honest. Next up I have the 4K re-release. This is the Zavvi one, and again this design here was used in other countries, but this is the Zavvi one. And then we have the lenticular magnet version. Again, that's a 3D Blu-ray in there. And then we have, a bit of light reflecting on that one, the Mondo version with quite a dark artwork, I have to say. But I think I maybe prefer this artwork than the original Thor released. Then we have the Kimchi exclusive. This one, the steelbook is the same as the initial launch, so it's just the kind of the slipcase that's really different here. You could get a quarter slip as well, which was in lower numbers, but I preferred this lenticular, which had that kind of animated sort of lightning effect on it, which I thought was kind of quite good. Although it was produced in high numbers, 700, still reasonably low though. This is actually one of the first premiums I actually got, I have to say. Moving on to Thor Ragnarok, which I actually don't have loads of editions of, to be honest. This is the kind of standard launch steelbook. I quite like the design, if I'm honest. This is what I mean by more of a posed kind of publicity kind of shot. I think it looks a little bit more interesting. This is probably regarded as the best out of the Thor films. And then we have the 4K re-release. This is the Zavvi version. Again, this design you'll find outside of the UK in different kind of retailers. I know this has been released in America, for example. And then we have the 3D lenticular magnet with a 3D disc, Zavvi release. of Thor Ragnarok. We do have a 3-movie collection. There's actually a very similar looking 4-movie collection. This is the 3-movie collection. This one is the UK version, and obviously has the first 3 films. This came out prior to Love and Thunder. And speaking of Love and Thunder, this is the Zavvi edition, their collector's edition. That is the standard steelbook that was launched, I think, mostly worldwide. But this one has a slip box with different artwork on it, looking very Masters of the Universe, I must say. It's a firm card kind of case, which I kind of quite like, and you get like a booklet and stuff in there. I mean, Zavvi's attempt at somewhat of a premium version, albeit this one isn't numbered, so they can produce as many as they like. Okay, so now we move on to the non-MCU steelbooks. Now, I know arguably with the Multiverse of Madness and all of this, you could arguably say the Phase 4 has kind of incorporated many of these movies that were made by other companies, but still Marvel films that have been folded now into the kind of the mainline MCU. But it's not how I display them, and I don't really think of them as MCU films per se. So this is the obviously the first one being in alphabetical order now. So the Amazing Spider-Man, this is the Andrew Garfield movie, and this one is a American steelbook, a 4-disc one, I must say, that was a Best Buy exclusive. And yeah, that is, I believe, the kind of the main steelbook that was released in the States. We have, I think, what is a Dutch steelbook with a similar looking design here. This one just being a Blu-ray version. This is a sticker pack, which I know some people aren't huge fans of, but it is what it is. That is, I think, the Dutch version with a very similar looking design to the American one. In the UK, we had this one, and this was, as you can see here, actually printed on the J card, an HMV exclusive steelbook, with HMV being a retailer in the UK. And then we had a later re-release with a lenticular magnet. I actually think this was a HMV exclusive as well, to be honest with you. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was, because this wouldn't have been from a shop, because it's got the security tags on it. So this is mirroring the kind of the ones that were on Zavvi, but I actually think this is an HMV. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think this is HMV rather than Zavvi, sorry. But yeah, this is the re-release with slightly different kind of artwork, different kind of pose from the Spider-Man Andrew Garfield version here. I also have this premium edition, which is from the company Wheat, which has this changing lenticular effect there. And this one is sealed, so I obviously can't show you the actual steelbook per se, but I will attempt to put a picture on the screen so you can see what the actual steelbook looks like. And this is limited to 1,450. And that is a nice looking premium steelbook, I would say, from Wheat, who really seem to be the ones these days to kind of produce a lot of this stuff. So next up we have the Amazing Spider-Man 2, and this is the standard release for the UK. As you can see with a huge sticker, it's an HMV exclusive here in the UK. And this is one of the easier steelbooks, I would say, to pick up, at least for Marvel films. You kind of see this one for not a lot of money going on second-hand markets and things like this. I kind of still quite like the design, though, I will say, even though this film's generally not liked all that much. And then we have the re-release, and as I say, as with the first Amazing Spider-Man, this lenticular magnet version, I'm fairly sure, is an HMV exclusive. It's hard to remember, to be honest. It has these security tags here, which means I bought it from an actual shop rather than online. And since Zavvi only appeared at actual shops for a very short time, I'm fairly sure this was from HMV. But anyway, that is a significantly different design from obviously the previous version. And Yeah, Amazing Spider-Man 2. This one's a little bit of a rare one, if I'm honest, and it's one that I've only ever seen this one time. It's an Asian Metalpak. I'm not quite sure who makes it, and it has a kind of a PET slipcase with a really kind of like unique design. Obviously a 3D Blu-ray. I'm not sure what specifically that country is. I couldn't tell you, unfortunately, what the characters are, but it is an Asian country, basically. But yeah, quite a nice little design, one of which I say is pretty rare. Maybe not particularly valuable, because I don't really see people clamouring for it, but it's one design I've only ever seen the one time, and at one time I bought it. Probably a more well-known Asian release is this one, and this is the wheat edition with a really nice lenticular slip box there, with, I have to say, probably my favourite artwork of this particular movie. I think that kind of pose is really fun. It looks kind of really bright, and I kind of quite like it. Again, the film isn't, maybe not one of the better ones, and this one is limited to 1,450, and it has as I say, a unique steelbook as well. And once again, I will try to include a photo of the actual picture of the actual steelbook on this overlay here. So moving on to Blade. Now you're going to see three steelbooks here that look remarkably similar. This is obviously the first Blade movie, and this is the Japanese steelbook. Now, my one, I didn't come with the J card, I bought it second hand. Otherwise, it would be more obvious that it was the Japanese one. But this is the Japanese Blade steelbook that looks very similar to the Canadian steelbook, which is this one, which I believe was the first one to come out. This one is sealed still, so you can some of the plastic's kind of stuck to the actual steelbook, so it looks a little bit patchy there. Main difference to this one, of course, being this big combo situation that's on the top here. But this is the Canadian version. And you also have the British version. This one is zoomed in slightly, so I don't know if you would have noticed that the picture's just a little bit zoomed in. And you've also got this kind of embossed border around the sides there, so that's how you'll differentiate the three. But they are very similar looking, admittedly. One might even say, is it worth even getting all three? But there you go. Okay, the only other Blade Blu-ray, or not DVD steelbook, is this one, which is a re-release. This one is a Zavvi version. Now, the Zavvi version comes in this slip box, which you're seeing on the screen here. The steelbook is actually different from this, and outside of the UK, the steelbook didn't come with a slip box, albeit it is the same steelbook that would have been released in America, Italy, Germany, etc. Now, you might be thinking, does this make this this slip box more collectible? But you can't get anything other than this slip box in the UK. I mean, you could throw this slip box away, but the J card would be too big and all this. So, it's not as nice as it is to have this version. I would have liked them to release the standard version as well. So you can obviously get both if you really wanted to. I mean, I could get an imported one, but that's incredibly expensive for what is, quite frankly, a mainstream bare bones steelbook. But anyway, that is the 4K re-release of the Blade steelbook. And then we move on to Blade 2, directed by Guillermo del Toro, and this is the German steelbook. Which I think is the first one to come out, first country to put one out. And then we have the UK version, which, like the first movie, you'll notice it's the same image, but just zoomed in a little bit more. But unlike the first movie, this one doesn't have those borders. This one was put out by Zavvi. And then we have the Japanese version, which is the same image, but obviously, as you can see here, it has the red background. And I think this is the best looking one. I think the kind of Valak's face here in the background looks quite menacing there in that kind of like red cloud. So I think this is the best out of the Blade 2 Steelbooks personally. I think the image looks the most striking. Again, I get this on the second-hand market, so I actually don't have a J card on my one. And I'm the sort of person who likes to keep my J card, so that kind of annoys me, but there you go. And then we move on to Blade Trinity, which, is, for the most part, I would say probably the lesser out of the 3 Blade movies. Although there are still elements here that I actually still quite enjoy, to be honest with you. But it is probably the weakest. There's no getting around it. So yeah, this is the German Steelbook. And then, again, Japan went for the same kind of image, but with a kind of like the more of a red motif on it. This time I actually have the J card on that one because it's still sealed. But yeah, that is the Blade Trinity Japanese edition. However, the UK this time did a completely different artwork. So yeah, so at least this one kind of looks a little different here. So that is the British version of the Blade Trinity Steelbook. So then we move on to Daredevil. This is the Ben Affleck Daredevil rather than obviously the series. Not much released on this one, to be honest. So we just have this, at the moment at least, this solitary Steelbook, which was put out by Zavvi, and this one is one of the ones which is, somewhat kind of sought after, I think, because there is so little to collect on this particular kind of movie. So this Steelbook is somewhat sought after these days. But there, put out by Zavvi. So then we move on to Deadpool. So this is the initial launch Steelbook, which I think went in every country. This is not a hard one to find. Let's not kid ourselves. So yeah, I won't show you that one too much. That is the Deadpool one. Then we have a re-release. This is one of the Zavvi Lenticular Magnets version. And I think this is a really fun cover with this kind of like retro kind of style background and, Deadpool riding a unicorn and things. I think that's quite fun. One of my favourite artworks, actually, I think, from the Deadpool series. Yeah, that is a fun little one. And I think you can get they did release a 4K version of this as well, but I don't have a 4K player, so I don't care about buying them really, but I only get them if there's no other option. So yeah, Deadpool. So what you are looking at here is a Film Arena kind of one-click with 2 Steelbooks in it. Now, it's the same Steelbook, but with 2 different slip cases. The actual Steelbook itself is the same as the initial launch Deadpool Steelbook, but the slip cases are different. I'll try and stick up a photo of the actual kind of slip cases because this is a sealed version. Now, the reason I got this, because I really like this artwork with kind of like Deadpool riding Colossus's back here, which at the time isn't available on a kind of a singular kind of Steelbook, even on the slipcase, only in this case. That's kind of why I wanted to get it. And this is limited to 700 pieces, of which mine is 437. I tend not to get a lot of one-clicks because I don't really want to spend a lot of money getting essentially the same Steelbook with a bunch of different kind of covers. I have a couple, but not all that many. But this one, I particularly kind of wanted that. It's a nice kind of solid, hard kind of cardboard kind of stock there. So it's a nice little looking piece, that one. Next up, from the original Deadpool, we have this kind of re-release version. This is a UK one, which I believe was put out by Zavvi. And it's kind of a comic book looking kind of art. It's actually taken from a photo, but it's actually kind of coloured to look like a kind of more of a comic book kind of style. And we have this one, which is a Metalpaks edition. Again, like the Film Arena one, it has the same Steelbook as the original kind of release, but it has this kind of lenticular magnet on the top there, so it's kind of, you know, quite kind of fun there. And this is limited to 500, of which mine is 106. So then on to Deadpool 2, which this is the kind of the standard release initial steelbook. As you can see, mine's from HMV. That's the UK distributor of this one, but I think this steelbook was available, you know, all over the place basically, and it's actually in some of the kind of the premium ones, I believe, as well. I didn't really like this steelbook, I'm not going to lie. It's obviously going to be kind of a, you know, childlike drawing, but it's, you know, I always say if you're paying for a premium product, I expect it to look like a premium product, not like the cheap-ass artwork that someone's kind of knocked up in their lunch break. But there you go, it is what it is. That is a steelbook that we got. And we have another one-click. This is the, I think it's the Blue Fans, I want to say. I've forgotten now. I think it's the Blue Fans edition one-click here, with 3 steelbooks in there. Now, my actual case is unsealed, but the actual steelbooks inside are not. So I will show you the cases. It's a nice little box here. Now, there's actually a story behind this one, because I actually wasn't going to buy a one-click. I was only going to buy one of the editions. Yes, it is Blue Fans. Let me just show you these editions quick, and I'll put up a picture of the actual steelbook. That is one of them. And it's limited to 1,000 pieces, this particular one. This was the steelbook I wanted, because it has the artwork that was from the re-release version, even though that isn't actually the re-release cut on this Blu-ray. But I wanted to get that because obviously it's kind of a different from any other release, and obviously it's quite fun riding the kind of the moose and whatnot there. And this one is limited to 500. So obviously some of these you'll be able to get outside of the kind of the one click. So I wanted to get this one specifically, but I found the one click for, to be honest with you, about the same price as you would normally see this picked up for. So I thought, well, I may as well. And then we have a similar looking still kind of design here than the initial kind of steelbook. Again, I'm not a huge fan of this design. The actual steelbook is quite nice though. The actual steelbook out, you know, it's underneath all this kind of packaging. And this one as well is limited to 500. So that is 3 Deadpool steelbooks in the one click there. We had the lenticular edition from Zavvi. I don't think it's as fun as the Deadpool 1 steelbook that they did. It's still kind of quite fun. And I think you can get a 4K version of this. Mine is just a Blu-ray. Next up, we have the Film Arena steelbook. This is the quarter slip, and they've done a few versions of this, which you know, has the different art and all this, the different slip cases on. This one actually does contain the super duper cut, however, which is the kind of the PG version, if you're not sure. So Film Arena do some numbered ones, and they do kind of a bunch of 1,000 units that are unnumbered. So that's one of those. I'm not too worried about the numbers, to be honest with you. I might still get a one with a slipcase on it at some point. This is some great artwork here. This is a re-release steelbook. This is actually, I think, a French one, and with a kind of a flash dance motif on the actual steelbook. Now this steelbook design was used for some other kind of premium ones as well, one of which I'll show you in just a second. So there's this one here. Now this artwork was actually used by 2 different companies on a kind of a premium release. This is a German version, and I think there's another version as well which uses the same steelbook and that's inside, which is the one I've just shown you previous to this, and this kind of same artwork. This one is limited to 666, as you can kind of see there. Yeah, but it's a fun, again, the Deadpool stuff tends to have pretty good artwork. And then the final Deadpool steelbook is this Spanish double pack, which obviously has Deadpool 1 and 2 in it. I've never seen this outside of Spain. So yeah, that is the Deadpool 1 and 2 Steelbook. Next on we move to Elektra. Now this is, out of the kind of the initial standard Steelbooks, this is one of the harder ones to get. I was fortunate enough to have the foresight to pre-order this when it kind of come, you know, before it came out. So obviously I've got a copy. Now the movie admittedly isn't one of the better Marvel films, and that's kind of saying something, but I absolutely love the artwork on this, the kind of the black and white imagery, but you know, only having that red on her kind of corset and kind of trousers there, I think looks absolutely stunning. It looks a little bit like Sin City, I think, in many ways. And this was put out by Zavvi, but the reason why I think this one is kind of so sought after is I don't believe it was ever released by any other company bar one, which I'll kind of show you in just a second. Now, if I had to say what is the grail piece of my Marvel collection, it's going to be this. This is the Film Arena version of that previous Elektra Steelbook. So it's the same Steelbook, but you have this extra kind of slipcase, and you get a booklet and all this kind of stuff that you normally do with Steelbooks. And this one is limited to 300. So one of the lowest run rates of a Marvel-related you know, kind of property, and they only did this one design. So a lot of times you'll get the you know, multiple different kind of slip cases. This one there was this one design, 300 of them, and that is it. And this one is sealed, and a lot of them are unsealed now as well. So there you go. That is the most expensive one, although I only got this for £35 when it first came out. So, but this one goes for 10 times that now, to be honest with you. Right. So next up we have the original. Well, I say original. This is the kind of the mainstream Fantastic Four film. Obviously, you had the Roger Corman one before that. So technically speaking, I suppose that's the original Fantastic Four. But this is what most people would consider the original Fantastic Four film. And this is a UK launch, UK Zavvi release. And next up we have a German version of both Fantastic Four films. So the original Fantastic Four and Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer. And there's not much released of the Fantastic Four films, to be honest. You can't actually get a soulless Rise of the Silver Surfer Steelbook on Blu-ray. You can only get a DVD one, or you can get it in this double pack. At least at the date of me recording this video, that I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of release one at some point, but as it stands at the moment, if you want this on Blu-ray Steelbook, that is the only way to get it. So that is the 1 and 2, Fantastic Four 1 and 2. But of course you had the, I think it's 2015 version of the Fantastic Four. Now, I haven't actually watched this movie yet, so I bought this Steelbook without actually seeing the film, but, you know, I'm a Marvel completionist, so I've got to do these things. And yeah, it's one of the couple of Marvel films I haven't actually seen. This is the initial launch Steelbook, somewhat kind of plain, and there you go. And we actually have a couple of premium versions of it. This is the Film Arena version with lenticular slipcase there. Now, it is the same Steelbook that I have just shown you, but obviously it has this slipcase which is specific to Film Arena, and as you can see, that is limited to 500 pieces. I believe Film Arena actually put out a couple of different versions of the Fantastic Four particular movie, so that's, I only have the one from Film Arena though. But we also have a Kimchi DVD release, and again, like the Film Arena one, it's the same Blu-ray inside, the same initial launch Blu-ray, but it has the exclusive slipcase limited, this one, to the Film Arena. And this is a foiled finish with the kind of like embossing on the writing and stuff. And then the actual picture is probably the best out of the releases, I would say. And this one is limited to 300 copies, of which mine is 159. So that is the Kimchi DVD version of Fantastic Four, also known as Fan 4 Stick. So then we move on to Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider was one of my favourite characters when I was reading comics back in the day. You know, his movie is arguably not one of the top Marvel films, but I actually still quite enjoy the initial movie with that stars Nicolas Cage there. And this one here is a German steelbook, and you can tell it's one of the earlier ones because of the kind of the blue border on the top there. Next up we have, I think, is a Dutch steelbook. Different design there. And yeah, this one's actually a sticker pack. But again, it has that sort of specific artwork to this particular kind of release. Next up, we have the UK version. Now, this one actually came out a little later than the kind of the rest of the initial launches. This one was a later release, and was limited. I think it was put out by Zavvi. Obviously, the thing you'll notice about the Ghost Rider ones is they're all different steelbooks. And then we have the Ghost Rider Film Arena version, and this one is my favourite artwork. I absolutely love this kind of image of Ghost Rider. To be honest with you, I would have actually really liked this image on an actual steelbook rather than kind of a slipcase. The actual steelbook inside is not exclusive, it's one of the kind of the previous kind of versions. But I would have liked to have had this, as I say, honestly, but with the actual logo on it. I'm not a fan when they just have a kind of a blank picture on it, to be honest. But yeah, this is Film Arena, limited to 750, so a bit of a higher run rate than the Electra one that I kind of previously shown. You get the kind of the book and all that kind of with you there. Yeah, but it's a cool looking steelbook. One of my, I say, absolutely one of my favourite designs there. Okay. So, next up we're talking Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance. So you're going to see a couple of steelbooks that look kind of similar here. Now this one is an empty case. So the story of this one is that Best Buy, you ordered the singular Blu-ray, and if you pre-ordered it, you got this empty steelbook that you would put your disc in. Don't know why they decided to do that. Seems like an odd thing, but there you go. So this is an unopened version, so this doesn't actually have a disc in there, and then you would get your own disc and stick it in, essentially. So I got a second version and did exactly that. So that is the American steelbook again. However, this one does have a UK disc in it. Now, obviously, that one doesn't. That one's open to me. The J card isn't actually with that one because I kind of don't know what I did with that J card, to be honest. But there you go. So that's kind of a little bit of a hybrid because it has an American box and UK discs. But we have the kind of the same design on the French release. This one is a DVD and Blu-ray combo. So the same design with minor differences, obviously being the kind of the border here. And obviously you've got the kind of the French kind of writing on this. So the same basic image, just, you know, tarted up a little bit differently for the French market. But that's not all. We also have the German version. Difference being here, of course, is the title is on the kind of the side going down here. And you've got the blue border on it. But again, it's the same image, but with slightly different kind of, you know, bits going around it and stuff. And then we have the UK version, which was again put out by Zavvi, and again kind of put out a while later after those kind of initial launches had come out. Very kind of different design. Almost looks like a Mondo one, this one, I think, but it isn't. I'm not a huge fan of this one. I think the artwork isn't particularly, it doesn't really pop, if you ask me. And it just kind of seems a little bit, I don't know, incidental to a certain degree. This is a 3D Blu-ray. But that is the UK version. So moving on to Howard the Duck, which I think some people don't even realise is a Marvel movie. And technically speaking, you know, this was the kind of, I think, the first theatrically released Marvel live-action Marvel movie. So there you go. Yeah, This is a German version, which for a long time was the only version that you can get. I believe it was actually an exclusive to a German retailer called MediaMarkt. And so, yeah, this was the only version you could get for a little while. However, there are other versions that have come out since the German one. This is the American version. And as you can see here, it's exclusive to the retailer FYE. Similar looking design, the egg's a little smaller. And obviously the title's up here. And that is the American version. So Howard the Duck, this is the UK version. Initially this was sold as part of a mystery box by Zavvi, but it was later kind of released separately. And this one, this art is obviously different from the previous two and is exclusive to the UK. And I don't believe this version was sold outside of the UK. So that is the Zavvi exclusive of Howard the Duck. And then we had the 4K version. Was anyone asking for a 4K version of Howard the Duck? Again, with different kind of cover up. This one, newly commissioned. This one was actually released in other countries outside of the UK. This is the UK version. I know, for example, America had the same Steelbook. You know, obviously, because with a kind of an American disc. But this is the UK version. Again, this one put out by Zavvi. Okay, so then we are talking Ang Lee's Hulk, the Eric Bana version. Now, this one is a lenticular version. I can't remember if this was put out by Zavvi or HMV. I want to say Zavvi with this one. And it has this lenticular kind of magnet on there. I think the Steelbook underneath is kind of maybe been released in other countries. But that is the UK edition. We also had this version. Now, Zavvi put this one out, and they actually did a double pack. And I actually unboxed this particular Steelbook in the Incredible Hulk section. So if you want to see the actual Steelbook of that, go check that out. But it has that die-cut kind of like outer slipcase revealing the kind of the Steelbook, but kind of behind it there. Of course, the Hulk movies are actually distributed by Universal. So this is why these Steelbooks look like this, and no other kind of like MCU movies or Marvel movies kind of look like that. It's because Universal have the distribution rights. It's an interesting idea, and it does make it look somewhat kind of unique, although albeit the kind of it looks a little messy just looking at it, you know, without really knowing what's kind of going on. So this one was put out by Zavvi, and that's a UK edition. So then we have a landscape Steelbook. This is actually a German version. Again, with that kind of, you know, I think this poster art here was kind of before the big reveal about what the Hulk kind of looked like. So this is why the kind of what the poster art is kind of obscuring his face. I mean, after the fact, it seems a little weird. But yeah, this is a German version and a landscape Steelbook. There's actually a special name for a landscape Steelbook, quarter book or something like that. It's called. I can't remember off the top of my head. We also have the UK version. Now, the image is kind of mirrored there. I don't know if you kind of noticed that. And the colour here is a lot darker than the German version. Now, this UK edition was put out by Play.com when they were still a thing. So that is the UK version. And then we have this comic book version, which was released as part of a kind of a range of movies with this kind of comic book style art. Not Marvel movies, just kind of other films, for example. This one is a German one, but I believe you can get an American version of the same Steelbook. Okay, so moving on to Logan, one of the most well-regarded of all the kind of the comic book movies. This is the initial launch, as you can see here. The UK one was put out by HMV with kind of a comic book looking art style. And this contains both the theatrical and noir version, which is essentially black and white. We also had the re-release with the lenticular magnet to kind of go with the rest of the Marvel releases that have that kind of style. This one, I believe, was put out by Zavvi, however, and you can get a 4K version, although mine is the Blu-ray, because I don't own a 4K player. so I only ever get them if there is no other choice. Next up we have a premium steelbook from Film Arena, and this is a lenticular slipcase. I'm not quite sure. It doesn't have much in the way of kind of movement on the kind of the animation there. And this is a limited one to 500 pieces from the company Film Arena. This one is unsealed, so I'll be able to show the actual kind of steelbook itself. And the steelbook is an exclusive to that particular kind of release. And we also have another premium version, this one from Metalpaks. And this is kind of a thicker box set. This one is sealed, so I'll have to put up a picture of the actual kind of steelbook here. I actually used to have the steelbook separately. I bought kind of a separate version, but when I got this one, I kind of sold that on because, you know, it was incomplete. So this one is, as I say, by Metalpaks, and that one is limited to 1,100, of which mine is 400. A real, like, let's say, thick version here with various kind of goodies inside. So that is the Metalpaks kind of box steelbook, so to speak, of Logan. Okay, everyone's favourite superhero movie. We are talking Morbius. This one was a Sony kind of movie trying to kind of expand on that little corner of the Marvel pie, so to speak. I actually quite like Morbius as a character. I always did in the kind of the comics, so I was actually quite looking forward to this movie. And there are aspects of this I actually did quite enjoy for a cheesy kind of 90s style one. This is the initial launch steelbook, and this is the 4K version because that's all you can kind of get for that kind of initial steelbook here. This is the UK version. I'm not the biggest fan of this artwork, if I'm honest. I think the artwork here looks kind of messy. So there you go. I also have this Japanese steelbook that comes in this kind of slipcase and various kind of bump that has a kind of a PET sleeve underneath. Obviously this one is sealed, so I can't show you the actual steelbook, but what I will do is put up a picture of what the steelbook looks underneath, but it's kind of similar to what you see in the front, to be honest with you. And I actually got this through Amazon in Japan, and you actually get like this extra kind of DVD, which I've just kind of masking tape to the back to kind of keep it in one place. Yeah, I mean, Sony is a Japanese company, I think people forget sometimes. So if you ever get a Sony release, you'll tend to get these kind of Japanese exclusive versions. It's not the only film that's had that. So yeah, that is the Japanese version of Morbius. And then we have the New Mutants, which is kind of an X-Men spin-off. This was in development hell and was kind of put back various times. It eventually came out, and I don't think anyone was too impressed with it, to be brutally honest. But you know, at least there is a New Mutants movie. I like some of the characters in this film. I do like this steelbook though. I think this steelbook is quite an effective idea, and it does kind of like lean into the kind of the more horror elements of this kind of otherwise lackluster superhero movie. Okay, so we are talking The Punisher, and the Punisher steelbooks get a little bit confusing. Now, what you're looking at, you may be forgiven for thinking, is the 2004 Thomas Jane version, but it is not. It is the 1989 Dolph Lundgren version, even though it uses this skull motif, which is from the 2004 version. Yes, I know, and it doesn't end there. But anyway, this is the British version of the Dolph Lundgren movie. Actually, my favourite out of the three Punisher movies, to be honest with you. I know it's kind of somewhat cheesy, but I still like it. And I actually think Dolph Lundgren is quite good as the Punisher, to be honest. So that is the UK version. And then we have the German version, which the artwork I much prefer because it actually relates to the film. And this is kind of a version of the original kind of artwork here, with this kind of like rainy sort of filter on it of Dolph Lundgren standing next to his bike there. So yeah, this is the German version, and I actually quite like this steelbook. As I say, much prefer it to the British one because it's kind of more like the film, represents the film better. Next up we have the Punisher 2004 version. This is the UK edition, And this one I probably put out by Zavvi, I would imagine. And yeah, that one actually, the skull is representative of this particular film. So this one, it does actually work. And then we have the American version, which is this kind of, again, it's using that sort of same skull, but newly commissioned artwork. This one is put out by the retailer Best Buy, and has this kind of extra PET sleeve that kind of goes over the top, that kind of adds to the image. And then we have Punisher Warzone, the third Punisher movie. Now this art is a little dark, to be honest, and once again it's using that same 2004 skull motif because it's the most recognisable out of all of the skull kind of icons, really. So yeah, this is again the Best Buy American version, and again it comes with a PET slipcase. It kind of gives it this kind of red filter, a bit like kind of night vision. But it references a scene in the movie. But then we have the German version, which again I much prefer. I think this is again, it's representative of the film and actually has his, he's the skull logo he uses in the film. But a nice kind of action shot. They did a bunch of these kind of promotional shots from this this kind of photo shoot here, some of which I've used on different media books. But yeah, so that's quite a nice one. And that is the German version. Okay, so we're moving on now to the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. This one was a release from Zavvi, and again it's using that kind of the magnet kind of to go with the rest of the Marvel movies that have that. Although I'm pretty sure the Amazing Spider-Man films were actually put out by HMV, not Zavvi, to make matters confusing. This is a Canadian steelbook. It's one of the earliest steelbooks. I believe it's from a Canadian retailer called Future Shop. An odd design with obviously a lot of kind of blank space on it, but it is what it is. Being an older steelbook now, this one is harder to come by. You do see them pop up here and there. This one is also quite a rare one. And this is actually a Metalpak from a company called Blue Club. You may not be familiar with Blue Club. That's because they are now known as Blue Fans. So this is essentially the precursor to Blue Fans. And this is a Chinese company with this kind of Metalpak design here, which was again using, if I'm honest, somewhat kind of lazy artwork. And then we have the wheat version. With the lenticular. They did a couple of versions with kind of like, non-lenticular slips and stuff. This is the lenticular version, clearly. And this one is limited to 1,350, of which mine is 1,212. Yeah, a fun design. And I believe the steelbook is exclusive. I will put up a picture because this one is sealed. So Spider-Man 2, much like the original one, this was put up by Zavvi. Good pose here by Spider-Man. I actually kind of quite like this this pose that he's doing in this particular shot. And again, this goes with that lenticular magnet to go with the rest of the Marvel kind of releases. I also have the Blue Club Metalpak. And once again, as I said, this was a precursor to Blue Fans. And yeah, we again have the Future Shop version of Spider-Man 2, that kind of same design. I mean, at least the Spider-Man steelbooks are uniforms. I mean, let it not be said. And again, we have the wheat version, and again, this has that lenticular slipcase. I don't actually have the third one. That's one steelbook I don't have. This is once again limited to 1,350. For some reason, the third movie tends to be so much more expensive than the rest, so I haven't got around to getting that one just yet. One day, however, I will. And, it's round 3. Spider-Man 3, again, this is the Blue Club version, which once again is a Metalpak. And again, the precursor to the Blue Fans company, a Chinese company there. And as before, we have the Future Shop version. And again, that's a Canadian company. This is an older kind of steelbook here. And then we have the UK version put out by Zavvi with this kind of lenticular magnets on it. But what we do have with Spider-Man 3 is a German singular version. To my knowledge, they didn't do a 1 or 2, but they did get on the bandwagon with the third one. So this is the only one of the 3 films kind of to break with the kind of the pattern, really. So yeah, they did have plenty on DVD, but this one is the first one that got a Blu-ray steelbook from Germany. There you go. The Sam Raimi Spider-Man have released a number of trilogy steelbooks, this being one of them. This is a German version. And this one, yes, obviously featuring all 3 movies in this one particular kind of steelbook. So that is the Spider-Man trilogy from Germany. So this is the British equivalent of the Spider-Man trilogy steelbook. I believe this one was, I actually got this in HMV, but I don't think it was necessarily a HMV exclusive. And once again, this has the 3 Sam Raimi directed movies that obviously starred Tobey Maguire. Next up, we have a German version, which is actually a 4-disc. And this, if you're looking at the singular steelbooks, this is probably the most uncommon. You can actually get a box set version of this, which actually comes with a statue of Venom, which includes this steelbook as well. I just got the steelbook on itself. But once again, it is obviously the 3 movie collection. And to my opinion, at least, I think the best looking out of the trilogy steelbooks, the kind of the pose, the colour scheme, I just think works quite well. And it's it's a nicely presented steelbook. So that's my favourite out of the kind of the singular kind of trilogy steelbooks. Next up, we actually have what's called the Legacy Collection. Now, this is essentially both the Sam Raimi trilogy and also the 2 Andrew Garfield movies. So 5 movies in total. This one is an American release by Best Buy, as you can kind of see here, and is the 4K release. There's 2 steelbooks in there. This one is sealed, albeit it's a little bit kind of tatty, so I can't show the actual steelbooks. I'll see if I can find a photo to put up to demonstrate what the steelbooks look like. But yeah, so it's 2 4K steelbooks that have a trilogy and the kind of the 2 films from Andrew Garfield in one set, so 5 films in total, and they're both collected in this kind of like jumbo kind of PET sleeve. They also did a non-4K version, a standard Blu-ray version. Same thing, this is again a Best Buy exclusive. And again, it's the 5 films, the 3 Sam Raimi movies and the 2 Andrew Garfield movies. And again, this was a Best Buy exclusive. This version I have is actually not sealed, so I can show you these 2 steelbooks. So there you have the Andrew Garfield one and then the Sam Raimi one. So yeah, so kind of a nice set. I think obviously they're kind of reusing artwork here, so maybe the 4K one is probably a little jazzier in regards to the artwork, but that is the Blu-ray version. So moving on to Venom, of course, one of Spider-Man's foes, and this is the first of the kind of spin-offs in the Spider-Man universe, so to speak, by Sony. And this is the steelbook that came from HMV in the UK. I believe you could get this. There was 2 UK steelbooks. This was one of them. This one put out by HMV, which I think is probably the better out of the 2 standard UK steelbooks. With obviously a really quite good art of Venom, and I don't know if you noticed the Venom, it says Venom there. So yeah, HMV, that one. And then you also had the other one, which was the Zavvi version. Again, this is a standard initial launch in the UK, just that we had 2 to choose from. And this one from Zavvi, I believe. Next up, we have the Blue Fans edition. This is the quarter slip, because I wanted the Venom Steelbooks to be somewhat uniformed, so I got the quarter slip rather than a kind of a full slip. I might get a full slip later on down the line. And this is limited to 500, of which mine is 12. And again, it's probably the busiest artwork from the kind of the Steelbooks that you can get, but I quite dig it, I must say. Next up, we have the Film Arena Steelbook, and again, same as the Blue Fans one, I wanted to get the quarter slip so it kind of goes with the rest of the Steelbooks, but you can get kind of full slip versions of this. This is a unnumbered version. There was 500 unnumbered versions released. Yeah. So it's, you know, it's quite a different design here, and I may well get a full slip version at some point though. And then we also have this Japanese version, and this is a sealed one, and as I've mentioned with other kind of Sony movies, because Sony is a Japanese company, you'll quite often find they'll have a Japanese exclusive release, and this is no different than this Venom one. I actually have to say, out of all of the Venom Steelbooks, this is probably my favourite, albeit it's quite similar to the HMV one. And you get a bunch of kind of like stuff in here, you know, normal kind of paper kind of like bits and pieces, but you get some little weird Venom toy in there as well. So that is the Japanese version. Moving on to Venom Let There Be Carnage, and this is the Zavi slipcase edition. So they put out their own kind of like quasi-premium version, which is this. You pay a bit more for it and you get this kind of slip box, which I think admittedly has better artwork, and it's kind of like a hard card sort of slipcase. It's not numbered though, so you know, not really what you would consider a premium version, I would argue. But I think it looks probably nicer than the kind of the standard version. And yeah, they also did a Japanese version of this as well. Again, this one is sealed, so I can't show the actual steelbook, but I will try and put up a photo of what actual steelbook looks like, albeit it kind of looks similar to the image here. And this was actually this got from Amazon Japan, in which case you get this extra kind of DVD here. And again, as I say, the Sony being a Japanese company, you're going to get these kind of exclusive editions that come out of Japan, because it is obviously a Japanese release, Japanese kind of, you know, company ultimately. Right, so the X-Men movies, and yeah, these kind of are in a bit hard to know what order to put these in, if I'm honest. So they're just the order I've decided on, and we're going to start with this one, Wolverine. So this is the UK, as you can see here, HMV edition, with kind of like interesting artwork. You're going to see some variation of this in a minute. So that is the UK standard initial launch steelbook. And then in the States we had this Metalpak, so not technically a steelbook, but a Metalpak because of the hinges there. And this was a exclusive to a particular retailer. So the same kind of image, albeit this one has the kind of the sun kind of behind Wolverine there. So that is the American Metalpak. But we also have a French edition as well. And this one is, I guess, the same as the kind of the UK version, albeit you get this kind of lenticular kind of magnet. It's not a particularly kind of like well animated one necessarily, but yeah, so that, it's a little bit of a difference there with the French version. We also have a UK lenticular version, as you can see with the sticker. This is exclusive to HMV, and yeah, different artwork on this one. They love some Wolverine action, don't they? Oh, but it doesn't end there. Yes, we have a German version with a different artwork again, and a different lenticular kind of magnet. Once again, it is not one that is particularly massively animated. This is a 3D disc. Actually, you get 3 discs, one of them being a 3D. But no, I think maybe possibly my favourite out of the images here for the Wolverine. And then you know, we'll end up with this with the Wolverine. This is the another UK version. They kind of did some of the X-Men films in this kind of style. Ironically, they didn't finish this line in the UK, but this kind of style of artwork was available in other countries for some of the films, which we'll come on to. Right, so the X-Men proper. So this is the obviously the original movie, and this is I believe this was an HMV steelbook. I want to say it was a while. It doesn't actually have the sticker on it, so I can't remember exactly, but I'm fairly sure this was from HMV with that kind of compartmentalized kind of artwork on there. So as mentioned, the kind of style of artwork that was I showed you in the Wolverine video wasn't continued in the UK for some of the releases, but this is the original X-Men version, and this one is an American release, I believe, for the original X-Men. And yeah, I think really interesting focusing on Mystique on that one, which I think is an interesting kind of choice, but makes for quite a striking steelbook. This one maybe is one of the more random releases I have, and this is a Russian steelbook. Now, this is a Blu-ray, but I will point out this is a G1 size. G1, if you don't know, means it's a DVD size steelbook, despite actually being a Blu-ray. So it's a little longer than the traditional kind of Blu-rays. But yeah, I gotta say, you know, obviously different countries, I like having that kind of variation and the kind of a different kind of style from, you know, a different country there. It looks a little bit like the definitive edition in its styling, but yeah, so a Russian steelbook. We also have this Metalpak they did in the States for all of the X-Men films at the time. And this is the, I forget which actual retailer this was. But yeah, that's the X-Men Metalpak for the first movie. And then we have a UK release, and I think this was from Zavvi, if memory serves. And this is obviously to go with their kind of lenticular edition. That's just the standard Blu-ray version. Moving on to X-Men 2, or X2 as it's sometimes known, depending on what country you're in. This is the Zavvi kind of re-release version that included their lenticular magnet to go with kind of the rest of their set. We have the American Metalpak. Obviously there you notice it's called X2 X-Men United. That's the American title of the movie, I believe, compared to X-Men 2. But confusingly, we have a UK release which also calls it X2 X-Men United. This is, I think, the first release, the initial launch for this movie's steelbook. And then we have that kind of like scratchy kind of art style one. This is actually an Italian version. So I've got this kind of sort of set of X-Men steelbooks from all different countries. But yeah, again, I like the use of a different kind of character compared to your normal Wolverine. So that's quite cool. Next up, we have the Russian version of X-Men 2. Again, this is a G1 size, so a DVD size steelbook, albeit it is a Blu-ray edition. It does come with a DVD as well, however. And again, a very different looking steelbook from anywhere else in the world. Yeah, and I'm pretty pleased to have that. These are the only two Russian steelbooks that I've got to date. I don't even know if any more exist, to be honest with you, but if I ever see any, I will pick them up. So then we move on to X-Men The Last Stand, or X-Men 3. I don't hate this movie as much as other people. This is the American version, I want to say. Again, that kind of scratchy kind of art style. So that's the X-Men Last Stand America. Also from America, we have the Metalpak. Now, I actually had to buy this twice because I managed to lose my initial version of it. I have no idea where it went. So I had to re-buy this, which is kind of annoying, but there you go. I was missing this one particular metal pack. Maybe it will turn up one day and I'll have 2 of these. But yeah, so this is the metal pack from a particular American retailer. The Last Stand, the 3rd movie. And then we have the initial Steelbook from the UK with, I think, possibly the worst hair from the Wolverine character there in this particular photo. It looks awful. We have the re-release version with the lenticular magnet. Again, you can get this a 4K version, but I don't have a 4K player, so I just get the Blu-ray version. And then we have a French X-Men trilogy, so the first 3 movies. And like the Russian one, this is actually a G1 size, despite this being a Blu-ray set. So yeah, we have the first 3 movies, X-Men, X-Men 2, X-Men Last Stand, in this French collection. So next up we have this X-Men trilogy, which is obviously the first 3 movies in this jumbo steelbook. So it's obviously a thicker steelbook, and I believe this is a French edition. So yeah, so you're going to see a reasonable amount of trilogy steelbooks, to be honest with you. So there you go, it's a French one. And then we have this one, which I believe is actually a Spanish version. And this is, again, the first 3 movies. You'll notice on this one it says Trilogy Volume 1. Obviously with Professor X there on the front. Next up we have an Italian version. Again, the first 3 movies. So now we move on to X-Men Origins Wolverine. And this is a UK steelbook exclusive to HMV, as you can see with this sticker there, and has a pretty good lenticular magnet, as you can see there with the image changing. Next up we have the German steelbook of X-Men Origins Wolverine. We have the American Metalpak. Again, Metalpak similar to a steelbook, but has a different kind of hinge system and a marginally smaller. And that was from an American retailer. You have the kind of what I call the scratchy art version. And then you have the kind of the Bone Claws UK release, which I think was probably the first release. So now moving on to X-Men First Class. And this is the UK steelbook, which was a exclusive to the online retailer play.com, who don't exist anymore. However, I think this steelbook is probably the one that's available kind of worldwide, pretty much. Similar to that one, we have this French edition, which you can see here actually has the French language, X-Men Le Commencement. But also the image is kind of zoomed out a little bit more, so you actually have the full kind of circle there. But that's not the only difference. This one actually comes with a kind of digibook, which is kind of glued to the back of the steelbook. So it kind of ends up being, you know, a bit of a thicker edition, so to speak. So a similar looking steelbook to the UK edition, but not exactly the same. In the States, we got this Metalpak. Again, this one from a retailer in America, although I'm not sure which one potentially. We have this German version. The good old picture of Magneto there. We have a UK kind of re-release, this one from Zavvi. The lenticular magnets, obviously, to kind of coincide with the previous lenticular editions that were kind of put out by them. And then we also have the, air quotes, scratchy artwork. Scratchy artwork edition. There you go. Moving on to X-Men Days of Future Past. This one is the 4K release. Actually, they'll get the 4K version of this for some reason. And this is the lenticular magnet edition that was kind of the re-release version from Zavvi. We actually have an Asian edition, although I think the Steelbook was the same one that was used in the States, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not 100% sure which country this is from, because I can't obviously read that. So possibly Korean. I'm not 100% sure though. So that is the I'll call it an Asian version of X-Men Days of Future Past. The initial Steelbook out in the UK was this Sentinel one for X-Men Days of Future Past. We also have a German version from the retailer Saturn here, as you can see with the sticker, and it's a similar looking Steelbook, other than it has this kind of lenticular magnet with it, and there's actually a 3D Blu-ray there. So that is the German Saturn exclusive version. We also have the Days of Future Past Rogue Cut, which got its own Steelbook, and this is a slightly extended version of the movie. That is a UK edition. But we also got a German edition with Mystique on the front there, played by Jennifer Lawrence this time. And that again is the Rogue Cut of the Days of Future Past. Now, from France, we got this trilogy edition, which is the prequel trilogy, and it's a G1 set. So again, that's a Blu-ray inside, but a DVD-sized case. Now, this one actually only comes with 2 films. The idea being it has a space ready for X-Men Apocalypse. So you would put your Apocalypse Blu-ray in here, and thus making it a trilogy. So this was kind of released before, you know, Apocalypse actually kind of came out. So speaking of X-Men Apocalypse, this is the Zavvi re-released lenticular magnet version. This is the initial launch. As you can see here in the UK, it has an HMV sticker on it, so that's where it was put out from in the UK. So this particular Steelbook, I would say you probably got this more or less most countries as their kind of initial launch sort of Steelbook. I actually have the Metalpaks version. Now this is the same Steelbook as the initial launch, but obviously it has their kind of like own sort of lenticular kind of slipcase with it. And that one is limited to 500, of which mine is 444. So a lenticular version of X-Men Apocalypse. I also have a Film Arena premium version, and again it's the same Steelbook, that initial Steelbook, obviously that was put out in most countries, but with just this kind of lenticular kind of sleeve. This is a full slip one and limited to 1,000, and you get kind of, you know, books and postcards and whatnot, all that sort of stuff in there. So that is the Film Arena version. So a couple more kind of collection ones. This is the Italian sort of second trilogy, so to speak. X-Men First Class, Days of Future Past, and Apocalypse. We also have the Spanish release. And again, it has those same three films in, the kind of the new prequel cast, so to speak. This one obviously with Magneto on it. We also have this, which is kind of a bizarre release in a lot of ways, because this is actually a Blue Fans release. Now my one is sealed, so I can't show you the actual Steelbooks. But the actual Steelbooks themselves are the same Steelbooks that have been released in their kind of initial launches. They just have their kind of individual own slipcases, and I'll put a photo up of what they kind of look like. But the interesting thing here, this is an earlier kind of a Blue Fans edition, and it's limited to 300, of which mine is 20. And it's, you know, it's 4 movies, and if you can see here, it's a relatively kind of plain box. But you have X-Men Origins Wolverine, you have The Wolverine, you have First Class, and you have Apocalypse. But you might be asking, where is Days of Future Past? I mean, it seems like an odd omission. And as far as I'm aware, the reason for that is because China, you can't actually have time travel in films, apparently. So that is the reason why you don't get that movie in there. But there's some other weird issues here. I think there's some kind of like artwork inconsistencies and stuff like that. So it's kind of one of the earlier kind of Blue Fans releases, which isn't particularly highly regarded. But there you go. It is obviously a premium collection there, and some of the cases, some of the kind of the slip cases are kind of quite nice. And then we have the X-Men Dark Phoenix, and I haven't actually watched this film. This, along with the Fantastic, to date, the two Marvel films I've not actually ended up watching yet. So this is the initial launch, and was really the kind of the last in the kind of the Fox X-Men movies that were kind of produced by them. And then we have the Xavi lenticular version, which was kind of the re-release there with the lenticular magnet. And again, that was the release from Xavi. And there you have it. So let's get into DVD. I expect this is the portion that people will be least interested in, but I have to say I think there are some quite interesting releases that have come out on Steelbook on DVD. So we'll get right to it. This is going to be a mix of the MCU and kind of non-MCU stuff, just mixed together in alphabetical order. So we'll start off with The Amazing Spider-Man. I believe this was a Dutch release, and this is a sticker pack. This is one of the more recent Steelbooks I've got from on DVD, because there's not that many around now, obviously, of modern films. That is The Amazing Spider-Man. Next up we have Blade Trilogy. 3, 2. Next up we have Blade Trinity, which I think is the only singular Blade movie that you can actually get on DVD Steelbook. It's the German release. And not as bad as people say, this movie, I don't think. What you can get is this, I believe this is from the Netherlands, and this is the Blade Trilogy. It's technically a metal pack, and it has all 3 films in it. Quite hard to get hold of this one, to be honest. You also have Blade House of Chthon, and if you're kind of wondering what this is the actual pilot featured episode from the Blade TV series. It only lasted one season, sorry. So yeah, this is something that you obviously can't get on Blu-ray, certainly in Steelbook form. So this is why sometimes you'll get these kind of little nuggets with DVD Steelbooks. You have Daredevil, the definitive edition, a UK Steelbook. There's other titles that are released on this range. You have the Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer, and I want to say this is a Spanish Steelbook. There's one, there's kind of 2 here that look kind of a little similar, but yeah, this one I think is a Spanish Steelbook. And then we have a similar looking, I think this is Canadian Steelbook. The only real difference there is the title isn't on this one. And then we have the UK DVD Steelbook for Rise of the Silver Surfer. As far as I know, they haven't released the original movie Solus on DVD Steelbook, but ironically they've never released this one at time of recording on Blu-ray Steelbook, at least singularly. We do, however, have a collection. This is a Spanish release with both movies. This is a metal pack. We also have a second Spanish metal pack. Not sure they released 2 different metal packs in Spain, but they have. And again, this has got both the original Fantastic Four movies. Then we have Ghost Rider, and this is an Australian steelbook. I like this one because it's kind of quite different from any of the others, really. And then we have, I think this is the German steelbook. Very similar looking. We have the French. Sorry, this is the Spanish steelbook. My apologies. Difference really being you got this border at the top here, and the colours are slightly kind of like sort of higher contrasted. And then we have this French steelbook. Seems weird seeing Warner Brothers on a Marvel property, doesn't it? Then we have the sequel to that, which is the Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance, and this is I want to say it's a German Metalpak. I do like this one because it's obviously got, again, quite a different design to the rest of the releases. Then we have the German Steelbook, which is the same design as the kind of the Blu-ray Steelbooks, but this is DVD format. So next up we have the Incredible Hulk. This is a German edition, I believe. Next up we have the Incredible Hulk again, and this is the Canadian version, which is a, as you can see here, a Future Shop exclusive, which is a retailer out there, and they actually put out the original Iron Man Blu-ray steelbook, which is kind of one of the kind of grail steelbooks you can get on Blu-ray. So here we are with a DVD one, of course, the Incredible Hulk, with a nice kind of like saturated green design here. We have the Spanish steelbook with a different design. Actually, we have an Edward Norton on the front, which is a little bit of a change compared to the rest of them. And then we have the UK version. Certainly for me the most common. And then we have Iron Man. This is the Spanish version. One thing on the Iron Man steelbooks, they kind of look very similar, to be honest with you, as you'll kind of see. This is the UK version, and this was the similar design to the Future Shop one I was speaking about. We have a French version. Again, very kind of similar looking, aren't they? By far and away my favourite out of the Iron Man DVD steelbooks is this one, which is a German one with a really cool picture, I have to say. It's one of my favourite images of Iron Man in the classic, now famous superhero landing. And this one is a Dutch Metalpak. It's actually, you really can't see it, but it's somewhat embossed, this one. Don't know if that will show up. But... Then we have Iron Man 2, and this is the German steelbook. Iron Man 2 again, and I think this is a French steelbook, this one. I've actually got a little bit of damage on my one. And then finally we have Iron Man 3, which to my knowledge is the most recent out of the DVD steelbooks in the Marvel pantheon of films. I don't think you can get anything later than this on just singular DVD steelbook at least. And this is a German version. Then we have Man Thing. This is a Dutch steelbook, and this to me is one of the hidden treasures among DVD steelbooks, because you simply can't even get this on Blu-ray, let alone Blu-ray steelbook, at least at the time I'm recording here. So this is actually one of my kind of more prized steelbooks, to be honest, because Man-Thing, it's one of my favourite characters in the comics. Even though this movie isn't brilliant, you know, it's still kind of a really nice edition, double disc. It's the only edition that has 2 discs, and you get like extra features like music video and things like that on there as well. So that is Man-Thing. So moving on to the Punisher, this is the 1989 version that starred Dolph Lundgren, and this is a German Metalpak with a lenticular, I would say magnet, but it's actually stuck on there, so sticker, although it isn't a particularly animated one. Still quite nice though. And then we move on to the Thomas Jane version of the Punisher. And this is, I think it's a German one actually. Quite a different cover to the rest of them, as you'll see. And then we have, this is actually a Metalpak, the Spanish version, with a nice simple skull logo. You can't really go wrong with that, can you? And then we have, I think, a Dutch version, similar looking, obviously with just the skull logo, but I think it's a little more lost on this colour design. Moving on to the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man. This is a Spanish Metalpak. Somewhat difficult to get hold of, I will say this one. As you can see, Metalpak on the spine there. I don't believe there was ever a actual steelbook of a singular version of this. We have Spider-Man 2.1, which is a slightly extended version of the second movie. And I want to say this is a German version. Spider-Man 3, this is a French version. Nice design, I like the design of this one. And then we have the Spanish version, which highlights the black suit. And then finally for Spider-Man we have the German version. Next up we have Thor. This one was a recent find, and I didn't even know this was released on a DVD steelbook. Very similar to the HMV one, but obviously you'll notice it doesn't have the kind of the borders around it, and obviously it's the G1 size. So yeah, this was I've only ever seen this once, and I picked it up, so I was quite happy with it. Okay, the X-Men. This is the original movie on the UK Definitive Edition label. And we have the original movie. Not quite sure where this is from, if I'm honest. Looking at it, it looks like German. X-Men 1.5. This is a slightly extended version. This is a Best Buy exclusive, as you can see on the sticker there, which means it's an American or Canadian release. X2 or X-Men 2, depending on what version of the title you want to go for. Again, this is the definitive edition, so UK version. We have X2, and I think this is the German version. X2, this is an American version. Quite a simple but bold design there. X-Men The Last Stand or X-Men 3. This is some type of Asian release. I couldn't tell you where, as you can see by up here. This is the German version. And this is the French version. And then the final DVD steelbook is, I think, a Turkish version. X-Men Origins Wolverine. And that concludes the Steelbook Marvel collection. Thank you for watching. I hope you've bared with me, and I'm curious to see your thoughts on the collection. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.